Let's talk autistic history and the Autism Wars. This is part 25 of a series. Now, I left off sharing an article by Jim Sinclair that was published, I believe, in 2005, describing the creation of the Autism Network International and autistic community that came out of that. So I'm going to go right back in now and start with where we left off with Donna Williams' visit into the United States during her first book tour. Donna states here, "We all had a sense of belonging, of being understood, of being normal. All the things we could not get from others in general. It was so sad to have to leave. Why can't we all live together?" We had each asked at some point or other. My own recollection of this meeting is a feeling that after a life spent among aliens, I had met someone who came from the same planet as me. We understood each other. At one point, I overheard Donna talking on the phone to someone associated with her book tour. Apparently, the caller had asked her something about how the visit was going. I heard Donna's answer. "We don't get a lot of cooking done, but we speak the same language." It was an amazing and powerful experience to be able to communicate with someone in my own language. I had sometimes been able to establish meaningful communication with people before, but it always involved my having to learn the other person's language and to do constant laborious translating. And that quote is stated Sinclair in 1988 reference. So here with people who shared my language, meaning flowed freely and easily. So the next section is titled Autistic Socializing. We talked a lot during those 2 days and laughed a lot and played around with each other's fixations and sat on the floor stimming a lot. The first time I had met other autistic people at a conference nearly 3 years earlier, I had observed the phenomenon of autistic people using their fixations as a bridge to make connections with other people. By the way, mine's Autistic History. All right, so now with Kathy and Donna, I experienced another form of natural autistic social behavior, interactive stimming. Even before I met Donna in person, I had recognized that she must have some visual fixations because she would always enclose some shiny or brightly colored object in each of her letters. When I was going to meet her, I thought of bringing something shiny as a gift, but I didn't have enough of a feel for it to know what would be appropriate. Then, during the time I spent with her, I watched her go into fits of ecstasy while arranging colorful objects and looking at them through a kaleidoscope. Yeah, and while she was engaging in this activity of arranging objects and looking at them through her scope, she kept insisting that Kathy and I look at them too. Of course, being autistic, I'm not supposed to understand things like this. But to me, that looks suspiciously like a person wanting to share a pleasurable activity with their friends. And for my part, having seen her reach the peak of rapture over an empty Coke can, and having heard her say that metallic red was her favorite visual stimulus, I knew what would be an appropriate gift for her. I got a red sequins-covered belt from Kmart and sent it to her. Pretty tacky from a fashion perspective, but just right for someone with her sensory responses. And that is a Sinclair quote from 1992, it says. So, in the years since that first meeting, I have seen this kind of spontaneous sharing of pleasure and fixations and stimming occur again and again among autistic people. It is an aspect of the autistic culture that has evolved within this autistic community. Besides communication and fun, we also began to glimpse the possibilities of autistic peer support. It's true, as Donna said, that we didn't get a lot of cooking done, but what we did get done was usually a result of our reminding each other that it was time to eat, or that the soup someone had put in the microwave was ready. All of us had significant difficulties managing the tasks of everyday life. But between three of us, someone was generally able to remember and to remind about the really necessary things. Just a side note, I see this phenomenon of reminding each other about life basics during the day is still happening in the autistic community, but we see it, or I see it going through as memes or messages or images of just, hey, remember your meds, your this, your that, things that go, oh yeah. So in a way, we're still doing this even online in 2023, and I'm sure in very many other formats as well. But yeah, definitely an autistic community trait. I'm not sure if it's otherwise elsewhere, but I know it's here still. We speculated that if we could all live near each other, we could divide up the activities of daily living so that each of us would only need to remember and organize 1/3 of the tasks. We could share the responsibility for reminding each other when it was time to cook, eat, bathe, etc. 13 years later, this idea of a permanent physical community where autistic people could live and support each other still gets discussed from time to time on the ANIL email list and at Outreach conferences. Maybe someday we will have the material resources needed to try and make that happen. Autistic adults as a resource for parents. This is the next section. Another dynamic of autistic community or of autistic sub-community within the larger NT community emerged during the first meeting. Interactions between verbally proficient autistic adults and parents of less communicative autistic people. Each of us individually had a lot of experience interacting with parents of autistic children. What was new this time was the opportunity to interact meaningfully with other autistic people and the distinction between that and our interactions with parents. In this case, the parents, Rita and Doyle, were actually foster parents. They were knowingly and voluntarily becoming parents of an autistic child, taking into their family a teenager who was completely nonverbal, not toilet trained, not able to feed herself, and was sometimes self-injurious. Sometime earlier, Doyle had posted a query on an internet forum I was on, asking for advice about teaching his foster daughter to chew solid food. I had noticed that he lived in St. Louis and had referred him to Kathy because she lived in the same city. Now, with Donna and me coming to town for this visit, he had asked if he could come over and meet us. We agreed to spend a couple of hours with him one evening. The dynamic of our first meeting with Doyle and Rita was similar to that of many interactions between autistic adults and parents of autistic children within NT-dominated autism organizations, including online forums. They saw us as a valuable resource and hoped that we would be able to give them first-hand information that would allow them to understand and help the autistic person in their lives. We were willing to help them if we could because we did care about the welfare of their autistic child who couldn't communicate for herself. All right, I'm going to wrap this one up here, and we're going to start right back in the next video on the ANI community development article written by Sinclair in 2005. Thank you for joining me for a little bit more in autistic history.